I grew up in America, in Hawaii. And after university, I joined an investment bank in New York City. Not necessarily because that had been a lifelong ambition, but it just sort of fell into place that way. Most of my friends are doing it, and as a math major, you're sort of well placed to enter the world of finance. And in the process of that, I got a transfer to London, which was exciting because I'm actually British as well. So I got to use my UK passport, and I also got to switch to a group which was a bit closer to my interests, which was the real estate group. So I've always had an interest in architecture and the built environment, and being able to work in real estate mergers and acquisitions was a bit more exciting for me at the time than technology, but sort of realized in the process that I wanted to pursue my passions a bit more rather than pursue an investment banking career long term. And so I left, and I went back to study actually, and I got my Master's of Science effectively in urban economics. So I did that. That was a year, and then after that I actually got a job, surprise, surprise, using my finance skills, but at an up-and-coming developer that was working on super exciting large-scale urban regeneration projects in London. And the most exciting one was the Olympic Village. So we were part of a consortium that was effectively trying to form a public-private partnership with the government to build the village that would house the athletes, but then become a mix of normal housing. My husband announced that he had a job in Indonesia, and I found myself a trailing spouse in Asia, wondering what on earth to do. And I think many women can identify with this, that all of a sudden you're just sort of ripped out of your career and what you knew, transported to a different part of the world with a few connections, but not very many, and trying to sort of find your feet. And, I had a good CV, but that doesn't mean that you can necessarily, and as many women will attest, that doesn't mean it's easy to find a job. Having said that, I did find one, and I again worked for a developer doing their financial sort of management strategy and fundraising in Jakarta. But at the same time, a really good friend and former colleague that had worked both in investment banking and at the developer in London with me, who was Singaporean and who had just recently returned to Singapore, sort of called me up and said, hey, you're in the region and I have some ideas for projects. Let's do them together. And so Karen, who is still my partner, and I effectively moonlighted on pulling together a big deal in Malaysia, and officially sort of formed Pocket Projects with Karen. And sort of at the same time, really not long after, Karen and her sister Sharon stumbled across the abandoned theater space at Golden Mile Tower. And obviously being local, they were passionate about what had to go here. And we'd sort of thought, well, we have a vision for how we could do some intervention in Golden Mile Tower, and an independent cinema here, and a few other ideas for placemaking. But of course, we couldn't find anybody to take up the space and to run a cinema. So what transpired is we basically had some conversations and thought, well, why don't we give it a shot ourselves? With Sharon at the time being our general manager, Karen and I sort of leading from fundraising and partnerships and overall management. And then we also partnered with Luna Films, a guy called Gavin, to help us with the curation and the film acquisition side, which was something that we didn't know. So as part of that, 6 years ago, we founded the Projector. First time in a long time, a lot of disruption, and it was probably overdue. So it takes a crisis to sort of push people into innovation. It pushed us into very, very fast innovation. So it basically took us 4 months or a bit less to ideate, from looking into the possibilities of creating an online streaming platform to going live with content and generating revenue in late July. Having said that, with everybody's life being increasingly online this year, we strongly feel that there's content fatigue and that there's too much choice at the moment, and that we feel is starting to play out in people sometimes turning away from the content, either because they're becoming bored with it or because they just can't be bothered to navigate all the choice. The fourth thing that we see is that with the shift to online, we think that an aspect of sort of your regular cinema is replaced with at-home content. Not all of it, but some of it. But what we have seen, so we've been sold out every weekend since we've reopened, up to reduced capacities, of course, but the demand for experiences is just as strong, if not stronger than ever, because everybody has been denied that social opportunity. And the projector has always been more than just the film. It's a social experience. And we see ourselves very firmly as part of the experience economy, and we see that growing. So we don't see online as a perfect substitute for us. It's a complement. Analytical skills, if you want to set up your own business and be a founder, you need to be able to assess the opportunities and come up with a business plan. The second thing I would say is that becoming an entrepreneur, it's a sexy thing to do at the moment. So possibly in the same way that becoming an investment banker when I was 22 was the thing to do. I would say that there is value in your entry-level job to teach you the basic sort of functional, analytical communication, corporate skills that can serve you well later on. And I think perhaps there's a trend for people early in their careers to want to leave jobs that are not necessarily their dream job right away. And I do understand the emotions behind that and the vision that's driving that. But I really value my early years of investment banking, even if I didn't become an investment banker eventually, because it taught me so much in terms of the actual skills, but it also taught me a lot of the softer skills as well, as how to manage difficult situations in the workplace, difficult bosses, how to communicate effectively, how to be professional with clients. And these are skills that no matter what you end up doing are useful. So I would say stick it out at your entry-level job for perhaps longer than your ambition tells you want to, because it will serve you well later on. And the credibility that you gain from having done that as well shows that you have commitment, which is important. But I think that's something which is possibly not undervalued, but not spoken about as much. But so much gets lost in communication, and especially these days when everything is done on WhatsApp. The importance of face-to-face communication, particularly in conflict, when something needs to be resolved, and if it's not face-to-face, at least verbal, is hugely important. So if you can practice that as much in your early career as possible, it will definitely serve you well later on. And then I guess the last thing I would say is, we have an incredible team at the Projector of people who are not afraid to put forward their ideas. There's a tendency possibly when you're in big organizations to just sort of take what is asked of you. But if there's an opportunity to see what can be done within your job or your company, and to push forward that idea to your senior, to your boss, and then ask for an opportunity to execute it, that's hugely valuable practice and experience, but it will definitely fast track you forward in your career, because we don't always want to be the ones generating ideas. We want to hear ideas as bosses. Two of the biggest things I've learned from founding my own business and it being the Projector is that there are many disadvantages, obviously, to being a small business. But one key and huge advantage is your ability to be nimble and to pivot quickly. And we are seeing that with effectively our competitors, the existing cinema chains in Singapore. Mostly, they move slower when it comes to what kind of content, how you display and market that content. When it came to online streaming, we can do all of this much more quickly because we're small, and that's a huge advantage. And to preserve that as we grow will be a great challenge, but is very, very important, I think, to the culture and also the growth of the Projector. Another one that I have learned, which I don't think I understood fully until we had our own business, was the importance of your team, of the people in your organization. For the Projector, it is by far our biggest asset, and it's something we worked really hard this year not to have impacted. So despite having to close for 4 months and then operate at, it was about 15% capacity for a couple months there, we didn't lay anyone off and we didn't make any pay cuts, because we basically asked them to develop a whole new business and to come up with all these different initiatives. And it's to their credit that we are coming out of this stronger. And investing in your employees and valuing them gives you so many more rewards back as an investor and a founder and a business owner than I think I realized before this. So that's definitely a key learning. And then I guess another one related to being an entrepreneur and a founder is that I think if you want to take the plunge to being that, you really have to be committed to the lifestyle, to not earning very much for a little while, to being where you are for a long time. So I'm lucky that we've sort of settled in Singapore and we want to be here for a while. But you can't just bounce around the world or expect to get your corporate pay straight off the bat. So it's definitely obviously something we're working towards, but it should be a consideration for people. And it's absolutely worth the trade-off for me, because the personal value, the gratification from building this and seeing the impact that it has on people is worth so much more to me than perhaps a few more dollars in my bank account each month.